And what appeared to happen is, whoa, you can see it there. Some strange orbs come into the picture. They encounter the plane, and first there's one, then there's the second one, and then there's three, and then the plane goes poof. Now, there have been many attempts to debunk this. There's even been at upwards of $140,000 reward to debunk it. That has since been taken off the table because there are debunk hoaxers. And we're going to get to the bottom of the latest updates with Ashton and a new piece of the puzzle. This real creepy stories. So we'll get to all that. Ashton, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Diamond. I'm glad to be here, man.
All right, so break it down for our listeners. What has gone on over the last month with the debunk or the not debunk?
Well, so I want to be clear about, what's going on there. What's the weight of the evidence? What's the weight of the debunks? The strongest debunks that are out there are that the one that's been out there since August related to this video that we see now comes from Metabunk and a guy named Mick West, that they believe that one frame of this endothermic event that we see happen, they believe that it matches this Pyromania VFX, which is an explosion event, a different kind of event. And we've been able to show, going back to August even, that there's only one frame that's even similar, and that frame is not actually a perfect match. Their argument is that...
And in fact, these explosions mathematically form a very similar pattern.
Yeah, so exactly. They're called Taylor set-off blast waves, and so they're all somewhat similar. So you can really do that. We've even shown you can do that with a number of other similar effects to make it look like it's the same in here. The big thing that's compelling for this thermal video is that what we see from a scientific perspective, it all checks out. And then that's the weird part, is that if you were to create a macroscopic phase conjugation event, then it has been described by engineers and scientists to look exactly like what we're looking at here with respect to the orbs. We see this monopole, topological monopole in the orbs that are heat signatures, the way they converge at the end to induce the singularity. Every aspect of it is consistent with what we would theoretically expect from physics and science. Now, the thing that, and you can even see the tail of the plane sticking out. That's so bizarre, but
it's in negative or something, as if it has been vaporized.
Yeah, and so we've pretty much concluded, I'd say with like 99% sure this is some type of superluminal event where the plane's being moved from one location to another. But there is some small percentage that this could be an annihilation event. That would seemingly defy the laws of physics, but if antimatter is something that we can somehow create, then it could be possible. Otherwise, this event would be much larger than we see. And then it could, I guess, be some kind of cloaking event, but the smoke trail stops the moment the plane disappears, so that also seems unlikely. But yes, this is the part where if you can line up this edge to a number of different effects, so then you can claim that's what it is, but that's not really proof. In my mind, the only way we're going to get absolute proof is if the hoaxer were to come forward and they were to bring the source work that they use to create these videos, because the amount of requirements that we've got listed down in order to create them is huge, including like military classified information that wouldn't have been known to the public. They'd have to know even what our satellite capabilities were. And this video to me is really the strongest evidence. We see these gravity engines in front of the orbs, which are just incredible in my mind. Like, no, I don't know who's coming up with this. We've never seen anything like this anywhere in any other videos, in any ufology or anything like that. So that's the first debunk that is out there. And really at this point, like, to me, the big question that I've been having is like, how do we prove anything to be real in this day and age? So for your audience, like, I would say we're at the point where it's kind of like you got to take or leave the body of evidence, which I've had pinned to my profile for several weeks now. It's extremely extensive, includes the potential leaker of the videos, includes the requirements to hoax the videos, which if you add them up, there's just no way. And then the newest evidence as well, which that when we look at the satellite video in the bottom left, we can see coordinates. And when we see the coordinates in the bottom left, they indicate the real location of the plane in the Nicobar Islands, where the plane was at roughly 1840 UTC on March 7th. Or I believe it's about 2:40 a.m. local time, Malaysian local time on March 8th. And the thing about that is that information the raw data for the telemetry of the plane was not available until May 28th, 2014. That's over a week after the video was published. So how would the person have known exactly where the plane was? They just guess, and then they found out that they ended up being right. Is this the same kind of logic for how they knew we'd never find a plane or even one part of the plane in the South Indian Ocean? A couple parts of the plane washed up in the Reunion Island a year and a half later. And then they use, I found out they used some drift analysis, which was basically just confirmation bias, where the first drift analysis didn't work and didn't get the parts to the Reunion Island. So then they do some other drift analysis and they change it up a little bit. And it's not like they watched the part float to the Reunion Island. They just like look at it blow in the wind. They go, okay, yeah, that's good. That confirms that the debris would have got to the Reunion Island. And what's weird about it is that the debris pattern shift that they show, if something had been thrown in the water at Diego Garcia, it actually would go to the same location in Reunion Island. And that's that base, Diego Garcia, is the place where we had been speculating this plane ended up if it didn't really crash. So I think that how anyone can describe, nobody's even addressed the evidence. Nobody has come up with a comprehensive story for who or why anyone would have created these videos. It's just really a lot of conjecture, which is ironic because a lot of the skeptics will say that we are coming up with conjecture. But when you look at this video here, you watch the zoom in, you can actually see 3D parallax clouds here, which would indicate that what we're looking at here is not just real video. And you can see the shake increase as you zoom in as well, but that it would require a 3D rendered environment to develop this, which using computers from 2014 or earlier, that's a lot of processing power, especially compared to what we have available today. And if you're making a 3D rendered environment, then you're not going to use any 2D static pictures. So the Pyromania VFX is a 2D effect. So that doesn't have any volume to it, right? But what we're looking at requires volumetric 3D render. And then the second debunk that's come out related to the satellite video.
Let's just rehash that. So what you're saying is that back in 2014, if this was the actual footage that would have to be military, it corroborates that it's military footage because it is highly advanced for the time. Meaning that in order to fake this back in 2014, it would be almost impossible unless you had your hands on everything available.
Yeah, I mean, you have to know what the drones look like, what their where the loadout is on the drone, like what kind of cameras they had. There's a lot of people that didn't even think that this could be a real FLIR footage, and we were able to prove that no, they actually do have, the black or the blue thermal view FLIR footage is stuff that is out there in military assets. And that's part of the reason why this case was so compelling, is that every time somebody says something like, no, that's not right, that doesn't look right, whatever, without any logical basis, we research it and we find out, no, it is accurate. Like this is generally actually the standard way in which this stuff is usually displayed and filmed. Black and white with the FLIR, apparently that's a different mode on the camera. And all that stuff can be changed with just one click of the software. And then okay, go ahead.
And the reality is if this is advanced technology that is military grade, it would be top level, it would be beyond top secret, it would be specially compartmented information. There would be no way that anyone, once they know that this MH370 hoax or not hoax is out there and this information is being discussed, there would be no way anyone connected with this would be able to become a whistleblower, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. But we do, in fact, have a whistleblower popping up just a little bit ago. Can you elaborate about this channel, Real Creepy Stories?
Yeah, so this is a really bizarre thing that came up, is that in early January, this channel appeared. You can see the creation date was, I believe, January 7th. And on January 5th, I went on Tim Pool's podcast, and there was this Miami alien story. And I ended up making a post about it, and it got like 10 million views, more views than anything else I've ever posted. Because it was weird. There was all these police cars that showed up in early January after New Year's, and people were saying there was fireworks and kids fighting, but there was no videos of it. And so I made this post about it. And this account makes a couple like AI recorded stories is kind of what the gimmick of this account is. And you can see early on, there's like 3 of them about this Miami aliens incident. This is early January, January 7th. And I did not know about these videos. And then all of a sudden, somebody on January 10th pings me in the MH370x community on Twitter saying, have you checked this out? And there's this one called Diego Garcia Whistleblower, a letter to Ashton Forbes. Really bizarre. I can see how people think that maybe I would have created this, but I'd have to be a total psychopath in order to create and send myself a letter like this. And I don't even know. We were sitting here trying to even speculate how they made them. So this letter to me basically presents this story of the plane basically getting taken via espionage, and that this technology is real, and that this technology can lead back to sacred geometry, which it tells me to look into a gray bearded man that went on Joe Rogan. And we found out really quickly that was the guy
Randall Carlson.
That's Randall Carlson. I had no idea who he was.
Oh, and I do. I have extension.
Yeah, apparently everyone's like, you don't know who he was, you're lying. I'm like, dude.
And now with the reveal from Malcolm Bendel that they're using plasmoid technology to get super efficient engines, these people are all on the hit list of the richest people in the world.
So now, I mean, I'm glad that you know about him because I had no idea who he was. And so the letter even mentions connecting with Malcolm Bendel through Randall Carlson. It even mentions Malcolm Bendel's appearance.
I know more about Bendel and Carlson. I'm probably, top 10 people in the world. I've been following them both.
The letter basically presents this whole scenario, and you could, part of me is like, there's only a few different ways that this letter shakes out. Is that this is either some kind of super fan of me in the case, as well as Randall Carlson and Malcolm Bendel, or this is some kind of government psyop, either a foreign government or our own government, or this is a real letter from somebody who knows what really happened in this plane as it's presented. And they've used this YouTube channel and AI account to basically send what amounts to be like an encrypted message about it. And I'm leaning towards.
So if this is the same guy that leaked these videos back in 2014, and he now caught wind of all this, obviously it's had huge press. Could it be that he just quickly popped up this YouTube channel? It's easy to put up a fake YouTube channel with an anonymous account to get this letter to you. What does the letter say?
Yeah, so the letter pretty much encourages me. It also admonishes me for that story that the Twitter post that I made about the Miami aliens, being like, this might be better use of your time than reporting on Miami aliens. And mentions that the United States government has complete control. They have unlimited power, complete control of the world, basically, and that they've been using this technology since we discovered it in the 60s to prevent anyone else from having it. And that the reason why it's covered up is because if any 2 warring factions had this technology, the world wouldn't last a single day. This technology apparently can be used, the rudimentary form of it can be used for other aspects, including free energy and unlimited energy, but can also be used like, quote unquote, a magic FedEx. It corroborates a lot of the aspects, even times, and says that the plane was taken 2 hours and 13 minutes after it took off, which would put it at 1843 UTC. Which is a few minutes later than what we had been putting out there. So it's like it used the evidence that we put forth, but a lot of unique aspects. It even says that the United States knew about the espionage scenario in December. The plane went missing in March. I'd never even considered that aspect of it. And that the 8 Freescale semiconductor scientists who were Chinese nationals had been converted and told to defect and take the technology to China. That this whole thing was an elaborate plan. Even the fire, even the lithium-ion batteries were supposedly put on by the United States government because they have a unique burn pattern. And if people want to know, how does Ashton know all this stuff by heart from the letter? I've listened to the letter like 40 times. That's how weird it is. It makes the hair stand up on my arms. Because I'm sitting here and I've been talking, even in our previous discussions, that I thought the United States government was like saving the plane from the fire or whatever. And this letter says, nah, the United States government basically did this to show China who's your daddy, and like set up the fire, set it up to divert, and then wanted China to watch as they teleport the plane out of the sky. They phase it out of the sky. And that China, and this is something we did report on, is that we reported that China hacked Malaysian government the day after the plane went missing. But we also reported that these Chinese satellite pictures that got reported in Western media as debris in the South China Sea, that this was apparently some type of the Chinese government, like basically saying, you got us. And I had reported saying that could be some kind of spycraft where China is saying, we know what you did. But this letter presents a scenario that's China going, yeah, okay, you got us, we give up. And both of that.
Well, yeah, because the assumption would be that China would have unlimited technology that we're unaware of, and they would have been monitoring this. They would have seen it happen as easily as we're seeing it, and they would have known, like, oh my God, they got us.
Because here's the thing, like, it's not just that the United States government has to know what happened to this plane, because we know that we've got satellites everywhere. As part of this investigation, we found out the Cyber system is scanning the planet every 10 seconds. There's no freaking way.
Who's in charge of those files? Is it deep state? Does it?
Oh yeah, the NRO, CIA,
compartmentalized, right? So it's only going to be
like, all of them, and none of them are giving me back anything. It's all either we can't confirm or deny it, or it's outright rejections. Always for the exemption related to intelligence activities or national defense. And it's like, why is all this stuff being covered up for a plane that we supposedly had nothing to do with, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, no one really knows the backstory on 370, the huge amount of lithium ion batteries, the fact that there were people with fake IDs from the Middle East on the plane, as well as these Chinese nationals that were potentially defecting, maybe with top secret information, perhaps. And well, I mean, we come in with the Manhattan Project here, and we suck it into the wormhole, and we deposit it into a hangar nearby.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what the letter even mentions, right? And the letter mentions as well that it showed up at their base, which apparently is the whistleblower's base, at, I believe it was 1856. So that's like 13 minutes after supposedly it's getting phased out, according to this whistleblower. I mean, that's a very specific time. The whistleblower even says that we knew about.
So there's a 13-minute lag.
They set up a 13-minute time frame,
and
when they receive it. Yeah. And I don't know what that means. Does that mean it's like, go ahead.
Well, no, like, because the technology is brand new, and we've seen, like on Star Trek, when you get beamed from one place to another, maybe, and I would imagine in the early forms of this technology, you would wait a considerable amount of time from when you broke it all down atomically before you reassemble it, because you don't want any glitches like were reported during the Manhattan Project. You'd want time to have supercomputers confirm that every single atom is in place, and then you would rematerialize it, so to speak.
Yeah, and what I would say, just to not to really diminish what you mentioned there, but I think that what we're talking about here is more equivalent to like Star Trek warp drive than it is to their teleportation. Okay. And the reason why you might have that time lag is twofold. One, it could be that you're simply moving this plane to somewhere else in the sky, and then it's going to land right away, as opposed to just going right into the hangar. But the other one is time dilation, is that there could be a time dilation effect for moving at a superluminal speed like this, which means that it actually is showing up in the future from our perspective as we're watching it. From the perspective of the person on board the plane, they would appear in the very next instant. There would be no time that goes by. And time dilation is a real effect that's been proven already. Time flows differently based on how much mass and how much you speed up. So it's even been proven that you can theoretically slow down into superposition light. So it's possible even that this thing could be like stuck in a superposition and then released somewhere else at a later time in the future. All very weird stuff, but it is consistent with theoretical physics and science. So yeah, right now, I'm starting to think that this letter might be legit, just because the account went dark, and it posted two more follow-ups. One of them was something called the Chan Thomas Adam and Eve story, which is some kind of CIA thing that I wasn't really familiar with, but it talks about the poles reversing and some kind of cataclysmic event. And another one was the glitter conspiracy.
All right. So now you're revealing yourself. So this account is claiming that the Chan Thomas Adam and Eve story is somehow legitimate?
Not necessarily. It just makes two other videos where the video of the Chan Thomas basically just reads off the Chan Thomas CIA letter thing that's out there in the public. Yeah. It's not, neither of them are even close to the same level of sophistication and story related to this one, where it's like a very specific thing about the case that I've been presenting around the plane. The other ones are more like just kind of taking what's already out there and
so what you got here, and from my perspective, because I have the original Chan Thomas pamphlet.
Oh,
I had it in
cool.
my possession. I have 2 original versions, both worth over
Really?
$3,000. I have the 1989 hardcover signed by
That's
Chan,
cool.
and I've done videos on this topic for, I think my first video was 8 years ago. And the consensus conclusion is that Chan Thomas simply riffed off of the Charles Hapgood story
Yeah.
and made it a little bit more hokey, but there is no evidence for Hapgood or Thomas's story based on geologic evidence, geophysical evidence, etc. Yet some people want to claim otherwise. That's fine. They can do that. But based on what you're telling me, the guy's got about 7 videos up, and the first few are on the Miami alien hoax, which is garbage. It's just some blurry video. And then
the videos out there are fake.
You're the meat in the middle,
Yes.
MH370X, and then there's some other garbage AI voiceover for Chan Thomas. It's like a bunch of conspiracy theories sandwiched with MH370 in the middle.
You got it. And that's the weird feeling I get about it. It almost feels like
I just got it right now. That's why
it's like they put some junk on the sides in order to send me a specific message, right? Like that's just so weird. And then they went dark, and it's just, I don't know, man. It's really weird. It's the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in my whole life, probably getting some kind of weird YouTube video letter like this. I'm sure there'll be people out there that think that either I'm connected to it or that, oh, it's just some prankster, but like listen to the letter, because man, it is super weird, really specific. People tried to recreate something like this using AI, and it was so bad that like I couldn't even get through like 30 seconds of it. It's just like when AI creates a story, it's very just like rudimentary and very organized in a logical computer way, right? This letter gets
here
personal.
on his paste bin is he's you obviously went through all this.
Yeah, went through this. We found this paste bin. Yeah. And then in a later video too, there was a QR code on one of those, like either the Chan Thomas or the glitter one. And it opened up and it showed a bunch of like governments declassified like disinformation mechanisms, and even talks about like using memes to coerce people. Like I think they were actually real government files that were declassified. And I don't know if that was a message in terms of like, we thought, well, maybe this is a message where they're trying to either tell us to use memes in this battle of getting the truth out, or if it's just trying to explain how the government covers this stuff up. I really have no idea. What I can say to your viewers and the people that are watching is that I am, in my mind at least, 100% sure these videos are real. This technology is real. This technology is being kept hidden from us, and that the hard part isn't proving the technology is real. It's convincing people that technology can be real. I think that a lot of people out there, it's so far advanced. It's like trying to convince people in Salem's time that you could make an iPhone, right? They were just going to burn you as a witch. It's really, I think that's the level that we're dealing with in terms of disassociation from what's possible. And what I would then ask people is, people that are skeptical, people that are on board, thank you. I appreciate you for having an open mind. The people that are skeptical of this kind of thing in general, what I would ask you is, do you think that we've really been doing nothing for the last 80 years since we split the atom? Do you think that we are at the pinnacle of all science and civilization right now? Or do you think that we are closer to cavemen who've just figured out how fire works? Where you think we are in that spectrum can lead people to understand that we have a long, long, long way to go in terms of understanding stuff. And then this type of video here, now we can start to realize that, yes, we can have some type of anti-gravity type technology. It's not technically anti-gravity, but it produces those same kind of effects. And that, in my mind, I think the only logical conclusion for all of this being real is that we live in a construct, a holographic principle. It doesn't mean that our lives are useless or that we're computer game characters, right? It just means there's an underlying framework to the universe. And that if you kind of punch through the fabric of reality to that underlying framework, then you can create these types of gravitational effects. And we've seen this proven with the LIGO experiments, where we watch neutron stars spinning around, and then we can see the gravitational waves they create. Why is that important? Because when you have a gravitational wave, that's how you have time distortion. That's how you can create situations like are required for even things like the Big Bang, of where you have space expanding faster than the speed of light. How is that even possible? The answer, if you believe in the Big Bang, you don't believe in an infinite universe, is that we have to be able to manipulate gravity somehow, at least from the local sense. And that's what we're dealing with. Go ahead.
Well, and if you believe in the fact that in just 5 or 6 years, we're going to reach the point where everything is known, then clearly a whole bunch of stuff has been hidden from you for the last few decades. I mean, the whole idea that the alien abduction phenomenon does not have something to do with our shadow government or this technology is beyond idiocracy. Clearly, there has to be a connection. If you have these secret technologies, you're going to be unfurling them on the public. We know that the governments have been, for over 100 years, have been experimenting on the public without their knowledge. This is proven fact. So we're not making this. I mean, you can call us Alex Jones all you want, but the fact is that the proof is in the pudding, and that we can prove that the things that I'm saying are true and the things that you're saying are true. Simply be based on the fact that if, in fact, in 6 years, everything that will be knowable in our region of space will be knowable, that's called the singularity. And that's not because humans are getting super smart. It's because they've been using quantum computing. Humans have been using quantum computing and other types of advanced technologies that no one is allowed to talk about. My father, who was especially compartmented information back in the 80s and 90s and did spy proofing for the military, told me when I was 13 that we have the technology to have highways that are accident free, but it was never rolled out. This is in 1980. Okay. That is 45 years ago. It was never rolled out because it would have collapsed the monetary system. It would eliminate insurance and it would literally destroy the system. So they never went with the technology. That doesn't mean they forgot about that technology. So back in the 80s, we had the technology for frictionless, accidentless cars. It was never rolled out. And can you imagine in that time frame, 45 years, the types of technology that we've accumulated and has been withheld from the public?
Yeah, and what I was going to say on that front is another weird part of the letter, and this is something completely original that I had never even considered, was that it argues that we have figured this technology out in the 60s, but it wasn't until the early 2000s when quantum computers came out that they were able to operationalize it in the ways that we see there, because apparently quantum computers have some way to deal with nonlinear processing faster and real-time events in a way that humans can't keep up with, which is pretty consistent with what you just mentioned about the whole thing with quantum computers. And I think that all of these things also help tie the free-scale semiconductor scientists as well. I was just talking to Mark Sokol, who started the APEC, which is Advanced Propulsion Conference. And in that, he said that everything that all the anti-gravity ways that people have been trying to create anti-gravity have to do with microwaves and RF frequencies, I believe. And we found a specific thing that the Freescale Semiconductor company was tied to U.S. and aerospace by producing RF power needs. So I'm just sitting there going, these guys have got to be connected directly to the technology we're seeing. We also had found out recently as well that Freescale, right before the plane goes missing, had just patented a microchip that was the size less smaller than a dimple in a golf ball. That's how small these microchips are as well. And I think we had already reported that they had a 2006 NSA security report about the commercial emergence of superconductive microchips, where Freescale Semiconductors was listed in there 9 different times. This is how they seem to be connected directly to the technology. Now, you may say they were trying to save them. This is espionage, a weapon test. You may also say there's a VIP on board this plane, and the VIP is somebody that they're saving. Because if you think about it in this deep state mentality where these people are hiding this technology that's out there, then you could also argue that there might be individuals that have enough connections and power that they can call in their rescue me button, right? Maybe the one person who works on this special access programs related to this stuff. And, just from my experiences and the people that I've talked to, people I've interviewed on my Hard Truths podcast, it's absolutely out there. There are people working on these technologies. You may say, why don't they talk? The answer is they do talk, and then they get discredited and people ignore them, we just live in such a cynical environment right now where it's out there in the public. And then even some of them, they get their rocks off from lying about it and knowing that they know about it while nobody else does, right? So I would ask everybody out there to think about this. If what I'm saying here is true and that this technology is out there, some people are trying to get it out, other people are hiding it out there. People are talking about it all the time, and everyone just says, "Who are they? What do they have? What's their credentials?" Right? Like, how do you get anything out there? That's the dilemma. There's no way to do it. What do you think, Diamond? Like, how do you reveal this stuff?
Well, do you think this could be related to the room temperature semiconductor reveal that was first debunked and then reversed in the last few months?
You mean the LK99, the metal
Yes.
material? Interesting about that is Salvatore Pais, who, if you guys look at his patents, I mean, his patents like basically tell the story of these videos. I interviewed him several times. One thing he says, you don't even need that to pull this off. And we found a coherent matter wave beam, which is this like several micron long microchip. We're talking about the size of like a virus, guys. That's how small these things are, that can produce these types of effects. And the patent is made by Lockheed Martin. So we might not even need that, but I do think they're related in the sense that I think that LK99 is absolutely suppressed in the very same way this technology is suppressed. And the reason why you have to suppress the metamaterial superconductor like that is because it can lead to these kinds of effects, is that a room temperature superconductor can create super powerful magnetic fields without any energy input. And once you have that, this is what enables this cascading amplification of energy that can break the Schwinger limit, which is what's necessary to basically rip through the fabric of space-time. And the weirdest part is that I had like no scientific background when I started at this, but just looking at the videos, I'd already pieced together that we need superconductivity, potentially room temperature superconductivity, in order to induce the effects we see from the orbs, in order to induce this kind of effect where they kind of pull into one another, where it's basically equivalent to magnets of the same polarity, trying to jam them together. And then you create this super repulsive force there. And it turns out that we've been digging into electrical engineering over the last 3 months. I've been trying to educate myself as much as possible with it. Turns out this is apparently accurate. And I'm just going, man. So, I've been like being able to figure it out intuitively from looking at it. It ends up being confirmed by science and engineers. And I'm not saying that I perfectly understand it, but if these were some random fake videos, you would never have all of these things coming together the way that they are. And yes, of course, the government's going to keep it secret because let's think of the implications. National security. Like, I want the United States to have this technology, but I also want the United States to tell the truth about what the hell we did to this plane. There was 239 people on board this plane. If we're disappearing airliners here, like, what else are they willing to do? It's messed up.
Well, dude, come on, get real. We just murdered over 1 million people in Ukraine and Russia over a proxy war about nothing except control of the earth and its resources. It's not about the land there. The people in the Donbass region and the people in Crimea had all voted years ago to be Russian. So this is a manufactured crisis to keep our eyes off the prize, which may be MH370, and the fact that in the next 5 years, technologies like we've never seen are going to be rolled out or going to be revealed, so to speak. They're not going to be rolled out. They're going to be revealed to the masses because they will no longer be able to be hidden. Even if you were to be able to program AI, let's say, to not reveal this information, guess what AI is going to do? It's going to find out and it's going to tell us.
They're already doing that with the metamaterial stuff. Yeah. Like they've already had the AIs that are like producing new elements from just taking different elements and putting them together in different patterns and atoms and lining them together, where it's like that AIs are already figuring it out. And I don't care if people call me a Russian sympathizer, but if you look at the war in Ukraine, just like you said, Donbass and Crimea are mostly ethnic Russians and they want to be part of Russia. It's kind of like if Russia was funding Texas to secede from the United States, we would think that that's completely unacceptable, right? And that's what we're getting involved with the Ukraine. Putin said yesterday, if we were not funding Ukraine, the war would be over in weeks. We literally are running a proxy war there. Can we at least just accept that reality of the situation? People are dying for no reason whatsoever,
Well, it's to distract from technologies that are going to be revealed before our very lives, I think. And hopefully the sun will take care of it, not for humanity's sake, because if there is a solar flare that ends the grid, I pray and I hope that it is not the deep state or the globalist, whoever this cabal is, which is not a single nation. Trust me, this is a group of nations, and it is not, there are not many people that are aware of what's going on. But the people controlling a group of nations may, in fact, initiate a false flag that will be a cyber attack, which we're well aware of. We've been already informed of it. Just like the pandemic, we were well informed of it before it occurred. And
they've been talking about it.
Yeah. And so the cyber attack is also being talked about.
Yeah. Attacking the grid, right?
Yeah. And you can always just blame it on North Korea.
But some North Korean hackers can take out the entire electrical grid. And the interesting part about that here is what I'll say is that, first of all, I'm going to come hang out in your bunker when it happens. But the second thing, too, is I'll have to bring an over Unity device, because if we can do this kind of thing, then we can create devices that basically open up to their systems to the vacuum energy that's all around us everywhere. And that we can essentially achieve over Unity and not break the laws of thermodynamics by borrowing energy that's all around us everywhere, so that we are actually inputting less energy than we're outputting. And I've found, as part of this investigation, there's actually companies selling these things to rich people. Maybe Zuckerberg has one in his bunker. I'm not really sure. But if we have that, then we can end our reliance on the grid. Could you imagine if people go off the
Ashton,
grid?
It's much more ancient than that. At 6:30, which is just 45 minutes from now, I'm going to go on a space on Twitter with the Shepherd of Truth. We're going to be talking about the Giza power plant. So I invite you, if you're up after this, it's going to be 30 minutes when we're done. Join us over there. Lee and I did, I don't know if you saw it on our Saturday podcast last week, we delved into the Giza power plant. There's overwhelming evidence, not only based on the sacred geometry and all of the numbers contained in the 8-sided pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza, but just there is overwhelming, astonishing physical evidence that the interior of the pyramid was not designed for human travel. So it was not for people to go inside. There are no stairways. There are no railings. The slopes are too steep for humans to travel. They had to retrofit all that infrastructure so you could just walk around in there. That the inside, and plus the residue of chemicals, prove that.
And it's over an aquifer, right?
It's over an aquifer, that this is a piezoelectric energy accumulator.
And people don't know what piezoelectric is, right? It's like the idea where you can squeeze it and produce electricity. And that's why you have quartz in your watches, where you shake your watch, right? And it can keep going. Same idea.
Right. So if you can create a resonant chamber, what you're doing is shaking your watch. And if your watch is the size of the Great Pyramid with casing stones, you would literally have the biggest battery on Earth. Like, I don't know why Elon Musk isn't diving more into this topic and trying to figure out what the Great Pyramid is, because he's literally trying to figure out how to make the most incredible batteries on Earth to create a battery plant, right? All these people, I think, are moving in the wrong direction. People like Malcolm Bendel moving in the right direction. And it will take a great reset and a new reawakening of what observational science is and what we can do as humans to shift the narrative. Because for over a century, there has been a chokehold on science. People have been murdered. People have been, we all know about Nikola Tesla. They've been stuffed in the corner. They've been shut down. And then when they die, they've been raped of their information and degraded. So this is what governments do. They're not out to help you.
Yeah. And so what I was going to say, too, is that even before this investigation, I was already all in on the pyramids not being a tomb. It makes no sense at all. Just look inside of it. It's like you're not making these weird slopes and angles and little tunnels if you're having this be a tomb, right? You're going to have it look like a castle is going to look like. It doesn't make any sense. So I never really thought that this thing made any sense as a tomb. So from that perspective, I'm already all in on it. And then with respect to the suppression of technology, I think that that's the biggest issue. Is it's so easy to suppress, and people say, "Well, people, if we entertain the idea of alien bodies or whatever, it's like it's just so easy to suppress it, no matter what, because people will go out there and they'll fight against whatever people try to present. And nowadays, anything can be faked that's out there. So one of the weird aspects that I want to bring up as well is that even people that do believe that aliens are visiting us or whatever, and I'm kind of agnostic to the idea in general, they even have a hard time, especially these ones on like UFO Twitter. that they're like, oh, yeah, I'm talking to extra dimensional beings every night, but oh, how dare you talk about teleportation being possible? And I'm like, like what? How do you think these beings are getting here, man? Like, you know, you're talking about extra dimensions, and I'm sitting here saying, yeah, okay, we can use that extra dimension, and we just call it the Matrix. And now we rip through to that, and you can poof, see what we see in this video right here, right? It's just kind of bizarre that on both sides, on the skeptic side as well as the believer side, there's this really visceral hostility towards this type of technology being real.
Well, I would think that anyone that claims they were abducted by aliens that doesn't believe in teleportation is a fraud.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, if you're talking about that, like, right?
Yeah, and my experience is that even some of the greatest alien stories out there, and I've spoken to them personally, they don't believe their own story.
Yeah,
it could have been ball lightning. I could have been hit by that. After all, I was in one of the second most obvious place to get hit by ball lightning on Earth. So yes, it could have been that. But because my whole career is based on being abducted by aliens, I'm going to stick with my book.
Yeah. And the ball lightning thing is interesting because going back to Malcolm Bendall, I mean, this was a rabbit hole I went down just a few days ago and dug into the thunderstorm generator. And this thing is literally producing cold fusion at higher temperatures in here, and it's producing higher elements. I posted a scientific paper, and this was the other weird thing is so that letter
in burning off the exhaust,
yes,
the hydrocarbons at the same time.
Yeah, basically zero emissions basically. And
if
it's
you
producing
get to
higher
the
elements.
fourth state of matter, for goodness sakes, plasma, which is 99% of the universe, and no one wants to admit it, you are literally going to cleanse everything that was the input to be burnt off there, and with the potential to transmute.
And then it's transmuting, and then the plasmas are going back into the engine, and they're creating it, making it more efficient. And so then I look, and I find Malcolm Bendall through this weird letter through Randall Carlson, and Malcolm Bendall's hanging out with Bob Greenier, who's a guy who came on my Hard Truths podcast #2. I had no idea that he's like friends with Malcolm Bendall. He was hanging out with him, I assume, in the Maldives. I'm not sure, but apparently that's where he's been hiding out for the last 7 years. And he sends me all these videos about it. I start digging into the videos. He sent me a paper that was published in Nature, just like December 30th, I want to say. So we're talking like a month and a half ago here. And the paper is actually like looking at the vortex tube of the thunderstorm generator, and it's producing COP of 1.05, which is essentially excess power in the form of heat. Then what's getting inserted into it. And they do spectrometry. Why can't I say that word right? But basically looking at the elements, and they're showing that there's different versions of these elements being created in terms of what's happening here. And I'm just
nailed it, bro.
I've got scientific papers backing this up too. Like now that's where I'm like, oh, okay, I got to be paying attention here, because the letter says, well, what Malcolm's doing is a more rudimentary form of what the type of technology that would be required to produce this macroscopic phase conjugation that we're seeing happen to the plane. And it's all based on toroids. I found out, like everything, these donuts, right? Everything's based on these toroids because of the magnetic fields that they produce. And then Bob Greenier says it's a fractal toroid, where it's like you take a donut and then you make a donut out of the donut. And then you do that 3 layers deep or 4 layers deep. And this is where essentially the free energy magic begins to happen, and these amplifications of the power that are needed to order to break the Schrödinger limit. And it's just,
so you take a lower element, and by moving it through the toroids, you recreate higher elements, therefore inducing the extra potential, which is the free energy. And what I find interesting, have you seen in the last 7 days some of the headlines where they just made a breakthrough?
Yes.
They just made a breakthrough in cold fusion,
and
they created twice as much energy as they put in.
Yeah, I made a post about that, and people started raging on me about it. And it just goes to show like how even stuff that's mainstream, it's just out there, right? Where it's like in the last year, there was like 4 events where they were able to produce over unity more power than was being put in from fusion power, right? And still people are like, no.
People think that soft disclosure and disclosure is some alien ship coming.
Yeah, no.
It's what you're seeing right before your eyes.
Absolutely. And so, and I found another article that was talking about people who are investing in some of these cold fusion technologies. There's people like Brad Pitt and Steve Jobs' widow. And you're like, guys, they're really rich people investing in this stuff, right? And sure, there's probably some levels of scams that are happening out there. People that, it's not really scams. It's just that most entrepreneurships like kind of fail, right? But like this technology is out there. I'm 100% sure. And it's just a matter of time before it gets out. So that's why I would say, you know, for people out there that want to hate on it, say this is impossible, I would say, you know what? I'm just going to sit here with the benefit of time, and time will vindicate all this technology coming out. I don't know if it's, hopefully it'll be before I die. I'm relatively young still, so I've got several decades left in me, I hope, unless I get silenced. But, you know, I think that eventually it's going to come out for sure. And I think superconductivity will be the first like chink or break in the chain, right? That's going to lead to everything else coming out, because once that gets made public, the room temperature superconductivity, that's where people are going to start doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Don't you find it refreshing that when you come on my show, I know everything that you've just researched and can corroborate?
I love it. I love how you knew Malcolm Bendel and Randall Carlson too, like right away. I'm like, oh, gray bearded man on Rogan. You're like, oh, Randall Carlson. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I had no idea who he was when I'm listening to this letter.
Well, he's one of the greatest independent researchers on sacred geometry on Earth.
Yeah.
And he became an independent geologist, even though he's an architect. And as a catastrophist myself, he was one of the first people I ever found. And when I delved into him, he's been researching this since the 70s. The guy is an enigma, and everyone should listen to what he says, because he's one of the true remaining observational scientists in the field of geology and catastrophism on Earth. Many of the other people are full of gobbledygook. They don't actually look at peer-reviewed papers, delve into the science, make conclusions for themselves. They just make up stories. But Randall Carlson is not one of them. He doesn't believe in you know, the 90-degree crustal slip of Hapgood. He doesn't believe in the stories of Adam and Eve, because he, like I, are observational geologists. We've done decades of field work. We've seen thousands of outcrops and erosional features. We've been all over the world, and we know that there's no evidence of certain things, and then there's evidence of other things like massive floods, cataracts, and other things that science can't explain unless catastrophism is true. Now, what is causing the catastrophism? Catastrophes on Earth. It's comet impact and solar outburst and other things. But the question is, if in fact 12,800 years ago during the Younger Dryas catastrophe, and then 11,700 years ago when sea level rapidly rose and brought us out of that, if that ended the advanced civilization that was here, then they were here 13,000 years ago and prior to that. And so most people suggest that maybe the Giza power plant was operational 18,500 years ago.
It's way older. Yeah.
What the was it doing?
Yeah.
Is
it
pretty wild. Rice machine? Is it just everyone's healthy machine? Does it make the Earth glow purple?
Does it do wireless power?
Is it wireless power? Is it telepathic? It's very bizarre what's going on back then, but clearly they knew what's being suppressed from us. Like the fact that the pharmaceutical industry is not out there to make you well. It's out to make money and to make you sick. The current state of science is not solutions, practical solutions, free energy, everyone's happy and healthy. It is controlled by multinational corporations that need to make Ducatis. And
power.
So,
money.
And so the money funders are keeping us sick and preventing us from understanding a future that could be absolutely unimaginable and amazing.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with a lot of what you just said there. You know, what I would say in terms of if I could be critical to Randall Carlson, I think he's a very smart person for sure. One thing that I find, though, is that when you start delving into the sacred geometry stuff and digging into the woo side, you lose a lot of people. I mean, we've already found how hard it is to even try to get people to look at scientific papers that are out there and proven, right? And I think that's the big part of the problem. And so what I say is that I actually think that a lot of what he says is true, right? That it is all about these, you know, the universe is based on geometry, and that there are ratios that probably, you know, do make sense. And that's what enables a lot of this stuff, because it just makes sense from living in a universe that's based on curvature. But I would say that you don't need to and this is what I say mostly to the people that follow me related to it, is that we don't need to prove all the sacred geometry stuff is true in order to prove that this type of technology can be true. We just need to show the technology and say, okay, this is what's required. Maybe it does require a 4:3:2 ratio in the thunderstorm generator. is related to all of these, historical things as well. It's like when we start tying everything together, that's where people go, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, whatever, right?
Well,
It's more like,
I think what they did, and it's not limited to your criticism. I think what Randall and Malcolm did, and many others are doing right now, because I have friends in Taos that are doing the same thing that others have done for 50 years. They're creating these coils out of copper with certain sacred geometry numbers. And Malcolm did the same thing with bending pipes and using angles. And the result they get is working, but no one understands what the is going on. So
and that's the secret, though, right?
We're at right now.
And that's how engineering works, though, right? It's like we don't use the equations to determine what's real. We look and see what we can do, and then we try to explain how it works, right? And that's how science really works. They don't know what they made
happen, but it's happening.
But it works, right? And that's what's important.
Other people have done it with things called Brown's gas and other perpetual motion machines. Those people have all been suicided. So Malcolm Bendel hopefully has enough security that, because he's already made deals, I think, with, I don't know if it's Mazda or some car manufacturer.
Yeah, what was the car company? Mitsubishi or Mazda? I can't remember which one. It was Mitsubishi?
Mitsubishi.
Yeah. And I've had a good authority that they've tried to take him out several times already.
Right. So, and they've retrofitted already engines that exist and have gotten efficiencies of like ridiculous efficiency.
Yeah, I think
would literally, if you needed 900 gallons of gas in a month, you'd only need 9.
Yep. And the question is, okay, well, why are they suppressing it? To your point, it's like, okay, you don't make as much money off it. It ends our reliance on fossil fuels. That's science gets gatekeeped by all these people, and it gets stuck in special access programs, and it gets stuck by corporations that are greedy, that they don't have any incentive to get it out there. And this is why we inch forward when we could be making leaps and bounds forward, So it's the sad state of our world and our reality. And I think that what we really need to focus on is trying to wake people up to it. I think that when we wake up enough people to it, then all of a sudden the technology will spill out. That's my current opinion. Now, how do we do that? I'm open to suggestions. Anybody out there?
Well, I don't think there's a solution until this juggernaut called multinational corporations gets completely destroyed. And there's only two ways that happens: complete global annihilation due to a cosmic catastrophe. Let's say, a 6 mile wide asteroid breaks up and hits all the oceans. Immediately, 80% of the population would be washed away, including all the bankers, all the money funders, and all the big cities. And then if Malcolm Bendel still had his technology in a cave somewhere and reemerged, because 10-20% of the population always survives, we could restart correctly. The only problem is, after a period of time, once you get enough power over the world or the region, you can then subjugate it. And over a long period of time, and I think we've seen this through the Yuga cycle, it only takes 10,000, 12,000 years. Everything gets terrible again, and then there's a great reset. So I'm not talking about the globalist great reset. I think they're playing on words because they know what's coming.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure. I think that what I hear from listening to these figures that are out there in the media, right, is that there's some aspect to this phenomenon of, disclosure, which I look at through the lens of advanced technology, that, there's something so big coming that it's scary to people, whether or not it's a matter of understanding the nature of where we come from, or it could be, you can look at through the lens of a cataclysm event that might be coming, right? But either way, I think that does concern me a little bit.
Well, the cataclysm is always coming. It always happens. We can't avoid it. But if the disclosure is, in fact, that the technology that we just shared earlier is real, we've known about it for decades, and maybe they use it for a false flag, right? Maybe they materialize some interdimensionals they have a contract with to come into our universe from a billion light years away to freak us out for a purpose. Who knows? I think it's going to be huge, and it's going to reveal a lot about what's going on. And I think the big problem is that once you tell people that we are not alone, the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, I think it threatens a lot of people's worldview, right? I think the science threatens people's worldview, right? It's, any aspect of it threatens people's worldview. Is that
You don't
there's
have to
a
be working like a slave your whole life. Energy is free.
yeah, exactly,
I
right?
mean,
And
that's
then
the
it's
big reveal.
and I think the part that's really going to break people's minds is that the TV's been lying to you this whole time. All the people you trust have been lying to you this whole time. All the academics that told you none of this is possible have been lying to you the whole time, right? And then I think the people who are the skeptics, I see people on UFO Twitter who are like, they base their whole social media profile on trying to prove that there's nothing special about the world and there can't be any advanced technology and all this stuff. And I'm going, I'm a little worried for these people when they find out everything they've been doing is a lie, right? Like, that's the psychological hit that that makes people do some pretty bad stuff.
Well, we should always be compassionate for the dumb people on
Absolutely.
Earth, because there's a lot of not smart people that believe in flat Earth and other stupid concepts, and it's not their fault. It's their surroundings. Well, maybe it is. Maybe they're lazy and they just don't take the time. You are a great example of someone with a very high IQ that in a very short period of time came up to speed rapidly on using critical thinking and research skills. I haven't seen anyone like you ever in my career that has the aptitude you have for learning and a thirst for learning. I think this is one of the greatest podcasts I've ever done, with just a free flow conversation and sharing of ideas, that a lot of people listening are right on the cusp. They believe they're halfway where we are, and they're really going to blossom. Because and there's also at the same time going to be a lot of people that said, Ashton gave you talking points and you researched them and you already knew what he was going to say.
Yeah, well, I think that one thing I would say too is that the hard part about it, I like to say that I'm not really special. Anybody can do what I'm kind of doing here, but I like to encourage people to try to do the same stuff and research yourself. But there's definitely a fine line, especially when you start to dig in this technology, where it's like the line between reality and fiction starts to blur, right? And you really have to keep an open mind while also being very critical of the evidence and the information that's coming forward, right? And that's why I like to talk to people and kind of just get the facts and the evidence out there and then come to my own opinion, but really try to make sure it's grounded in science. And I'm not talking, when we talk about this stuff, none of this is breaking the laws of physics. It's bending them a little bit, but it's not breaking them entirely. And I think that's where the line is. And so what I would say to the conspiracy minded people that are out there is, don't try to connect everything together. Just take it chunk by chunk, right? And then I think you'll find everything will begin to reveal itself.
Yeah, because that's how the people that are hiding this information are doing it. It's called compartmentalized information.
Yep.
Exactly. So learn each piece, come up with your own conclusion, do your homework, like we've always said for almost a decade now, and come to your own conclusions. Don't be a pushover. Things are not as they always seem. And I think that there's going to be a time in the near future that it's going to be very hard for people to swallow what's actually going on.
Absolutely. And I think we just got to keep pushing out the information out here, just like we are in this podcast, in terms of enlightening people and bringing them up to the level of understanding that there is something a little bit more magical about this world than what we see on the surface.
Ashton Forbes, we appreciate your rigor in investigation, the breakthroughs, and the limbs you've gone out on over the last few months. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Hope to have you back soon. This has been amazing.
Thanks, Diamond. Appreciate you, man.
And that's a boom.